Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the StarCraft 2 World Championship Series. We're live here in Austin, Texas, bringing you through the round of 16 as we find our way towards our second circuit champion of the year. I'm Nathanius, joined by two of my favorite StarCraft 2 Twitch streamers. We have Rotterdam and Pig. Or is it the other name today, Pig?
We're sticking with Pig. I'm just,
okay.
You know, Rapid challenged me to a fashion contest later on. We're going to have a bit of a catwalk contest, but
all right.
I figured I'd get into some local styles here.
I assume you'll be bringing the mechanical units instead of the Zerg units this time, though.
Yeah.
All right, Rotterdam.
Mix it up a little bit.
Are you going to narrate that catwalk yourself, though, Pig?
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a bit of a bloodbath. I know the way you like it, Kev.
It's a walk-off.
You know it.
Yeah, so we've had some sweeps so far. The games have been intense. We've seen a lot of the skill come out of the players. Rotterdam, how'd you feel about DNS's performance in that last match?
I didn't think it was bad at all. I think Hero Marine played an excellent series. I think DNS always plays a little bit scrappy, right? He's not the cleanest rollers out there, but he's really good. But it just felt where often Terran players, when things do get a little bit messy and scrappy, they start making bad choices, and Hero Marine just made very few bad choices. He stayed defensive when he had to. He was aggressive when he had to. I also love the variety of build orders that Hero Marine brought out. We didn't talk about it that much, but that's 3 games. That's 3 completely different openings that all made a lot of sense compared to which map he started on. So I don't think DNS played poor. Hero Marine just played really, really good.
Yeah. What did you think about that first map? Can I ask Kev about this one? This proxy cyclone, right? The Oracle comes in, it kind of sees the factory there. We were talking about this backstage, and I was like, does he think it's like maybe like a Liberator or a Banshee? Like what should he have done there to defend that?
I think that's exactly how he read it, because that's the only way that the turn Nexus makes any sense, right? Because otherwise you can never defend that, because you're already going to struggle. So I think he read it as there's probably going to be a Liberator in my main, maybe some sort of a weird drop that will kill some workers, but then at least I have 3 next side to fall back on. Because I think if he would have known that it was, you know, multiple cyclones, and you can get 1 sentry. I don't believe that getting like 3 or 4 sentries is good, because then if you miss 1 force field, you run out of energy. You don't have enough DPS to kill the cyclones. I think 1 sentry for a Guardian Shield is massive, but I think above all, it comes down to the Stalker positioning, and maybe even a Stasis Ward. He had 2 Oracles. Imagine if he drops his Stasis in his natural, it becomes really awkward for Terran. But yeah, you basically need to, I think you even need to Chrono Boost your gateways, because every single unit you can get out as a Protoss against that opening is very important, and it felt he was still somewhat surprised by it, and if you're surprised by 4 or 5 cyclones in your natural, yeah, that's not a good story.
Yeah, it was a very tough series for DNS, but Hero Marine looking really good. And he's the only man that stands in the way of the top half of this bracket, remaining with what we're about to have, which is a Zerg versus Zerg, as we've got ourselves our next match coming up, ladies and gentlemen, here at the World Championship Series between Lambo and True. And this series, man, we know that True is a bit of a crazy guy. We also know Lambo had to play a lot of ZvZ to get out of his group to even be here.
Yeah, a real clash of styles, I think, as well. Lambo's kind of a guy who's had strong ambitions and strong performances for a long time. Hasn't really been able to seal the deal. I feel like sometimes he's hit a real peak in his level, and it's always been when he goes up against the guy that wins the tournament. Back in the day, it was like Hydra and Polt he'd run into a lot. Then he'd kind of go through these phases where he'd run into, you know, the Neebs and the Snoots and these sort of guys. I think now Lambo's been training in Korea. He's taking the game more seriously than ever. But True is a ruiner of dreams. And I think it would just be like True in a nutshell. If he just like comes in and just throws out these crazy aggressive games, it's going to be hard for Lambo to stop.
Yeah, True's been playing all over, playing in the Korean leagues as well. I think they were just talking about how he was in the GSL round of 32.
And he also did well in the Super Tournament, I believe, right? He participated in that one, and actually had a strong show in there. Didn't he take Dark to all 5 games? Is that correctly? He had a ZvZ series, right? I think that went down to the wire.
I cannot remember it at all.
Either way, True is that wild card. Like, I think that Lambo, the moment you see this drawing, you're like, okay, that's actually pretty good, because you're always worried about a potential Sero or Neeb, which he could have got, because Lambo was the runner-up in his group. And it's actually kind of funny, because twice in this tournament, Lambo ended up losing his first Special 3. In the second group stage, it was against Namchar, but then he beat Namchar in the Deciders match. In group stage number 3, he lost his opening match against Masa, but then he turned it around to the Decider, and it was always 1-2, 2-1. So yes, Lambo's looking good, but that's also, he's been walking down a very thin line.
Yeah, that thin line. We're about to see who gets pushed over it as we have Smix on the stage to introduce our players. I know, Smix, I know you love Zerg versus Zerg so much, right?
I am, and after 2 straight 3-0s, I'm hoping for a little bit of a closer series this time, Nathanius. But it is time to introduce those 2 players onto the stage. So without further ado, it's the WCS Summer Champion going up against a German Zerg fighting for his first WCS quarterfinals for the very first time. Please welcome up on stage, it is True and Lambo.
As we make our way through the top side of this bracket, True coming in known as an extremely aggressive player across the board. He is that guy that sends out the floods of hundreds of Zerglings after you. Very good at catching people off guard. It's a tough opponent.
I kind of like what Rapid said before. They're like co-op Zerglings. They do more than regular Zerglings, but I think that kind of rings true because they're also not in a control group.
Yeah.
As they aren't in co-op either. Because True is this guy who thrives in chaotic situations. A lot of players like these kind of like efficient mechanics, which are good in the calm, sterile games. True's like the messier the game gets, the better he gets. Whereas other players, it's the opposite. So he just like wants to mess the game up as much as possible. And I'm loving this hat, by the way. I think it really matches me.
It looks great on you. I think this series, by the way, has a lot of implications on the WCS standings as well, because both players made it into the playoffs at WCS Leipzig. Both of them actually played a ZvZ series, which I think is kind of funny. But back then, True took out Bly, so True did make it to the quarterfinals. However, Lambo made it to the round of 16. He lost 3-0 against Snoot. But obviously, both these guys already collecting a bunch of points. If you now again go to the quarterfinals or even deeper, you're making some serious leaps towards perhaps the global finals at the end of the year. So this is a big series for more than just the reason that we are here in Austin and there is a lot of money on the line.
Yeah, I mean, if you get 2 top 8s as True already to start off the season, you're kind of solidifying that ranking, right? And then you just get one kind of like top 4 in there as well, and it's almost a short thing at that point, right?
All right. Thank you guys for your input and your feedback. We are going to be getting into this next series. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for True versus Lambo.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our next series. Starting off, without further ado, in the upper left-hand corner, in the blue, it's True.
Alrighty. And of course, we are going to be down here in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, on top of the other player. He is in red. It is Lambo. Okay, and we're already getting started off in True fashion. He goes for a pretty quick pool, pretty quick gas geyser. He wants to ramp up that aggression as soon as this series gets started.
Absolutely. It's good to be casting with you here, Fear Dragon. I fear that we may not be here for very much longer. This has the potential, as all ZvZs do, to be a very quick series. And anytime you have True in your games, he is going to try to make it that way.
Yeah, and of course, one of these players is going to be walking away in tears, as, of course, one of them is going to get knocked out. The playoffs is a brutal single elimination bracket. We'll see how exactly Lambo's going to be able to respond to this. He is going for the hatch gas pool in this situation, which is generally one of the harder ways to defend against that early pool aggression. When is True going to reveal the Lings? Is he going to go straight across the map through the center and go directly underneath what usually the Overlord is there? Oh, he's going to get so close.
He might be able to squeeze through. No, he doesn't care. He just wants the fastest possible path across the map. And
Baneling Nest as well. So this is not just going to be the, I'll send some 6 Lings out, maybe try and get a cancel and then play it out in background. This is hard-on aggression from True.
Right, True is, there really is no going back. The number of Zerglings this game that will run from Lambo's base back towards True's is going to be low. It's going all into that natural expansion, and this really does need to be a kill. True is going to have to go for it.
Okay, a couple of drones being pulled, but they're being pulled a little bit preemptively. Some of the drones, and one of the drones even from the gas geyser still has gas in its mouth. A couple of the Lings getting picked off as they pop out, and I feel like so far this is not going too poorly for True. Lambo getting some defenses up, but this is all just about initial aggression. Lambo doesn't know if there's a gas or if there's a Baneling Nest behind this yet.
Right, he is going to poke out now. I think he is going to see, yeah, right there. Those first 2 Banelings coming forward. That's actually a great opportunity to get some great connections. And the first one does detonate in True fashion. Now, this Spinecrawler is actually about to go down. He does actually cancel that at the last second. That means there's no static defense, and even the Queen that might count on it, it's going to go down. True dealing massive damage already. He's forcing a split in the main.
I don't know if you can recover from this. He's not even mining right now. Sure, the drones Zergles are staying alive, but for what good? They're not actually able to help get out any additional Zergles. True is continuing to rally units across the map. He's getting up a hatchery for extra larva, but I don't even think it's going to finish before this game ends at this point.
I mean, he's the truth. Oh my God, he's gonna land another Baneling. Decides to detonate it on the drones. GG. True takes a decisive game number 1.
You know, Rapid, that game got started so fast. I didn't get to talk about all the stuff I wanted to talk about. I was ready to sit here and say, you know, a lot of the Europeans, they don't really seem to respect True. They say, oh, he's not that good, blah, blah, blah. And all the North Americans are like, look, he plays like a clown, but the talent is legitimate.
I love the look on Lambo's face right there. He's like, I just got Trued.
Yeah.
3 minutes, 31 seconds, the game time in game 1, Fear Dragon.
It's pretty amazing. Of course, True he loves getting aggressive. He loves his lings. He also, one thing the ZvZ has kind of shown a little bit more lately is a lot of the Muta players starting to make a bit of a comeback, and True loves that kind of stuff. So this is going to be a really rough series for Lambo, already sitting down 0-1 versus a just super unpredictable player like True.
If we see a Mutalist this series, that would be a little bit surprising. I feel like while True definitely does have the ability to go a little bit longer than some of our pre-10-minute Zergs out there, you know, it does seem like he likes to decide it in the early game. He did it in game number 1. We'll see if he can do it again here. For Lambo, really, what was the big downfall there? Just building a hatchery at all?
I mean, it's a little bit rough in that situation because when you are moving your Overlord across the map, you don't necessarily, again, you don't get to see, is this just purely going to be some speedlings that are moving across the map? Is it just pure speedlings? Or is there a Baneling that's behind this? Are you still mining gas? It depends and kind of makes you sort of second guess yourself. Am I supposed to be pulling more drones to help defend that hatchery? Am I supposed to be canceling my own speed, just trying to get up, you know, spine crawlers or something? There's so many different things that are going on there. I feel like the Baneling connections at the end of the day, though, the first ones, oh man, Lambo is, he's either taking this in really good spirits or really, really bad spirits.
He's cheesing a little bit. I don't know, not as in doing a non-standard strategy, but he's got a big smile on his face, and you have to know once you lose that way, it's like, okay, we take those. Fool me once, shame on me. We'll see if he gets fooled again here, because like you said, it can get really aggressive really quickly. We'll see how he does as we get into our next game, game number 2 in this round of 16 best of 5 starting on Acid Plan in the upper left in the blue. Make some noise for True.
Good old Psystorm Gaming. Definitely been a very valuable pickup for them.
Yep.
A long time ago now.
Very valuable pickup for me was their jersey yesterday. It was pretty cool. So let's go ahead and introduce his opponent in the bottom right-hand corner in the red. Our European Zerg player, it's Lambo.
Dedicated, focused, and really wants to be able to make one of those round of 8 finishes. He's so desperately trying to pursue. It's True, he's made some good deep runs in tournaments. He kind of has his falling off points and everything, but overall, he has always been able to climb back up to the top.
That is true. True is a WCS champion. Lambo, a champion of the Meisterschaft, but he needs to come here and prove that he can do it in WCS against very stiff competition, and I'm glad to see there is already an adjustment that has been made. This time, both players going for the same build.
Yeah, just going to go for those hatch gas pools. I mean, this is the more typical opening to really see, or even just a hatch pool gas out of the way. It's a pretty common thing to see in ZvZ. And this is a nice map also for getting up that third base, but sometimes that third base can feel a little far away. And I will also say, I really want to see, I don't want to talk too preemptively too much about this, but occasionally you do see some Zerg players do really weird things, and I've seen True this as well, where you grab the more forward third location as opposed to the more further back one. I think our wonderful observer is trying to say, over to the right a little, over to the right a little.
There we go.
That third base, it's a really weird one to grab because it's so much harder to defend, but occasionally it's really useful if you're trying to get aggressive because your hatchery, your production is closer to your opponent, so your units that are attacking get there faster.
That's right. There's also some cheeky other bases that you can take. We're not seeing any crazy proxy hatcheries or any cheese. This is by far the most kind of straight up way that you can play a ZvZ. And you were talking earlier about how ZvZ kind of looks a little bit different nowadays. You can advance slightly later in the tech tree, get to those mutas, and we'll see what he wants to do. And it looks like it's exactly what you said, Fear Dragon.
Okay, now he is going to be going for the more forward base, but I'm still going to hold off and see, is this a sign of a big aggression coming out from Lambo? or is this just some sort of weird preference thing? We do have a Baneling nest coming out for Lambo.
Okay.
We'll see how he's going to end up using that, how many drones he's going to have on gas will also help determine a little bit of that, as he has 2 drones on gas. Okay, he's going to have enough for maybe some aggressive potential if he really wants to be, but time will tell.
Yeah, and Lambo throwing up his Baneling nest at the True as well. So there's going to be Baneling nests on both sides, maybe just a couple of seconds slower there. So remarkably similar. The big difference, like you said, is the forward third taken by Lambo. And I really want to see what he wants to do with that. He did have the faster Baneling nest, so maybe thinking, hey, this is where I want to go to ramp up some aggression. There's a bunches of drones in True's production tab, so he might be wanting to hold off a little bit before he pulls the trigger.
Yeah, and this ZvZ is always this game of reading your opponents. All the small little signals, whenever you get to see what units are popping out of the larva, how many Zerglings your opponent actually has, and you're always trying to cut little corners. You're sneaking 1 extra drone here or there, and you can already see even small little leads, like 3 drone advantage for Lambo. These are the small corners that he's cutting to try and get a bit of a lead, but here we have slightly faster layer coming out from True.
We do these cheeky little Zerglings getting in to scout exactly what's going on both sides. They don't make it too deep into the main, but I think seeing the roach wall up at the front really kind of tells you the limitations behind what your opponent can do. Trying to come in again, and actually that Zergling, I think it did get denied before it saw anything in the main. So yeah, he doesn't know how many drones there are still in gas or exactly what to expect.
And he's not going to see that the much faster layers coming out, and the fact that there's a lack of a roach warren. And I really do feel with melee upgrades coming out, True is playing his patented style where he says lings, banelings, and I assume a lot of times going to go straight into the mutas.
Definitely has that potential. These couple of Zerglings are going to try to annoy the Banelings. They do get a nice pick off early on. And these assassinations actually could make a big difference when it comes to having enough Banelings to defend.
All right, I think Ling got into the main base, and there is going to be that Spire being thrown down there for True. So Lambo, it looks like we'll be able to get confirmation on that.
Oh, he's going to go for it.
Oh, he's fighting the Ling. He's going to lose that battle. Okay, you know, he might still be suspecting it, though, when he just sees still no roaches really popping out. He doesn't really see anything but Lings, and he also saw the fast layer. So he's going to know it. He's moved across the map. This is a sign he knows he has to do something before those mutas pop out.
I mean, even +1 for those Lings is not going to be done before these roaches hit. The Spire is going to be years away. Even the Spine Crawlers desperately thrown down for defense. Lambo is going to try to win here and now, but he's getting his roaches surrounded by True Zerglings.
And it's only half of the roaches fighting in this battle. This is the ideal engagement in some ways for True, but the Lings, I just don't know if they're in high enough numbers right now. Ravager eggs being morphed to re-heal those roaches back up. Really well done by Lambo. And he honestly loses a couple of roaches, but he takes out so many of the Lings of True. And now True, even with the Spire finishing up, he needs another 30, 40 seconds to get up the mutas.
And Lambo got the opportunity to effectively morph those Ravagers. A lot of times that actually slows your push down a little bit because you have to morph them before you run in. No, he actually used them defensively to great effect, and now he pushes in where True has now much less Zerglings. The Corrosive Biles take down the Spine Crawlers. He's got his own Banelings coming in behind us. Everything explodes for True as Lambo crushes in.
And True right now just trying to buy time. One last little glimmer of
hope. He killed all the mutas.
Oh. 7 more mutas are going to be coming on out. He loses, I guess, some to maybe the Corrosive Bile or something, but this is just now that point where True has a bunch of units in his main base. His eggs get killed.
No mutas for you, True. Taking them out. He almost could have just killed the Spire, but a lone Mutalisk pops out. He's got a little bit of a friend there and a few more to come, but it's just not going to be enough. Everything will die. 43 drones down, and Lambo, with a perfect timing, takes game number 2.
Lambo, just exactly what he said, perfect timing, and it's all off the back of that really good scouting information. He was eventually able to getting that Ling into the main base, and even just getting over to the earlier links to the natural and confirming how many gas guys there were. He didn't see the second gas guys in the natural, but he saw the drones mining from it, and you can start to make some assumptions and continue to see, oh, you aren't going for this Roach Warren, and I need to be prepared for the mutas, and that's what signals the move out. That's how Lambo wins that game.
And he was so decisive, Fear Dragon. As soon as he gets that scout, he kind of infers what is coming his way. Instantly, 16 roaches pop up on the production tab, and you know he's going for it. And he didn't just move across the map. Even when his roaches were split up, he was able to defend against true Zerglings, which were his desperate attempt to try to stop that roach force from making it across the map. Couldn't do it. Lambo evens up the series.
Okay. And we're going to find out what happens in game number 3 is now, since the series is tied up 1-1, they still have 2 more games that either one of them have to win. So they still have a bit of room to maybe make some weird plays and everything. I expect Lambo, this is oftentimes a time where another Zerg player in a ZvZ, you say game 1, I got cheese, game 2, we play standard game. Honestly, I feel like this is a really oftentimes the time where the other player just says, I'm going to throw up my early pool now. Game 3, really commonplace to see stuff like that, but I don't know. How would you feel about just playing either standard, a straight-up game for Lambo, or anything else?
I did feel like Lambo does have a decisive way of playing. So when he sees an opportunity, he's going to go for it. I think in the non-standard game, True might have a little bit of an advantage just because he has so much practice with that early aggression. But Lambo has a lot of practice versus Zerg this tournament as well. He came through, I think, in group stage 2, one of the toughest brackets you could have imagined for him, dealing with a couple of very strong Swedish Zergs. He prevailed. So we'll see if he can prevail in this series as we get ready for game number 3, Fear Dragon. It's on Lost and Found. So we find our way to the bottom left-hand corner. In the blue, it's Psystorm Gaming, Zerg player True.
And his opponent spawning up at the top right-hand corner of the map, the red Zerg player. It is Clash's Lambo.
Fighting very far in the bracket so far. He's made his way through 3 group stages. He's looking to push potentially to his best WCS finish yet. He does need to make it a couple more steps along the way. And, he showed in that last game that he absolutely has potential to take on one of the scariest WCS Circuit Zergs out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Lost and Found, it is going to be one of Lambo's picks. It seems like most of the picks that Lambo's been going for are more of the standard maps.
Right.
Even kind of going into just the maps that you can sort of safely take bases for the most part. Whereas True is kind of the one that's like, yeah, let's get Darkness Sanctuary and stuff in there. 4-player map.
Well, that's really interesting.
4.
Because Lost and Found, I think it's actually modeled after a couple of Heart of the Swarm maps that have kind of been combined and rearranged and now come out here in a little bit of a newer format. Whereas True is actually not only a WCS Circuit player, but has most recently competed in WCS Korea in the GSL in the round of 32. And even though in the larger map pool now, Darkness Sanctuary is a big map, it's been in the GSL for a long time, and it hasn't been played a whole lot there, but it has been there to practice. So True might have a slight edge on that. Just if we do go the distance, right? I mean, we're already going to get at least the 4 games. See if maybe we go even further. I love this series and how it's shaping up already.
Yeah, it's already been pretty fascinating and kind of fun to watch. And I really want to see how Lambo's going to play this one out, because he's not going for, neither of these players are going for any kind of super early Ling aggression off of just the 1 base or something like that. In fact, True also going for that 3rd base, but the ZvZ aggression can always get started a few minutes in. You don't actually need to just say like, oh, well, he has a 3rd base, it's a macro game. No, there's plenty of ways you can just flood out Lings, because it's all the small little subtle timings of when is my opponent making Lings, when are they making drones, and scouting that out.
See which players decide to cut the little tiny corners in ZvZ. You saw True try to skip roaches, go straight to mutas, and he got kind of punished for it, not willing to build that intermediary tech. This time, he's actually the one going to Banelings, whereas on the other side, Lambo trying to skip past that tech.
Yep, getting up the Evolution Chamber, getting up the Roach Warren, and going for presumably like a more or less full wall off with the Queens there to kind of plug up the holes and the gaps. And oftentimes this means you're going to have a much further delayed 3rd base, but you get up a fast +1 weapons on your Roaches. You can get up a pretty quick lair as well to get up Roach speed, and then you can maybe make a move out across the map while you take your 3rd. If this shapes up the way that I feel like True typically plays, True is going to be going on heavy Lings, heavy Banelings, kind of like we saw in some of those previous games. And he's going to be looking to try and just use counterattacks to keep Lambo at home and keep him feeling uncomfortable about moving out.
I mean, that would be really idea, right?
Yeah.
If you can keep your opponent back in his space, then he's not flooding your main with lings or killing all of your mutas while they're in eggs with corrosive bile. So that's the ideal move here, but this is going to look a little bit different for True. He is going to commit to not only banelings, but also roaches and try to really hit with a very powerful, diverse early forest. On the other side, though, what is Lambo really working on right now? He's about to hit Lair, and I think that's where we really find out what direction he wants to go.
Yeah, third base finally coming down for Lambo as he says, okay, yeah, whoa.
Oh, what is that queen doing? I think that was the queen that picked off the Overlord early on. So kind of careless to leave it all the way out there on the map.
Ooh.
That's not where you want to run your Zergling. He's trying to snipe off another Baneling, but he actually just trades pretty ineffectively there. That was actually really good for True.
Yeah, you got to be really careful with your early game lings before the roaches start popping out. But Lambo has his roaches on the way, and he's going to find a nice another queen.
Another queen. Wow, Lambo really getting in there for the hashtag value. He is really getting a lot of value off of his Zerglings, whereas on the other side, True trying to get that value taken out this third.
The roaches should have already popped by now. It looks like they're finally starting to come forward.
Okay.
Hatchery getting awfully low, though. And True, with more lings that are moving across the map, they just cleaned up the lings on the counterattack. He may try and find an opportunity here, but the roaches are starting to get out in bigger and bigger numbers. And as the game goes on, it becomes more and more difficult to use these lings effectively.
But a big advantage here for Lambo won't be with his lings, but will instead be with roaches, as he starts +2 ranged weapons right as True starts +1. So he will always, for basically the rest of this game, have that ranged weapons upgrade. And that can be huge when you start to get to these big swells of roach numbers.
I mean, even just having the +1 weapons right now is really helpful for the lings, because the roaches will 2-shot the lings instead of 3-shot them. It's a 1 extra shot. Doesn't seem like a huge deal. It's a massive difference in how quickly you can clean up those Zerglings. True's lings are going to have such a hard time ever trying to poke forward now.
I always hate it when the lings try to poke forward, as they are wont to do. Now, once again, history repeats itself as True takes out the Overlords, or in this case, an Overseer of Lambo. But I feel like for Lambo, vision is just something he is so decisive with. So even though he's losing a few Overlords from having them way out there on the map, maybe a little bit disrespectfully, the information he's getting from it is being very effective. Now, this is a little bit strange to me, Fear Dragon, because both players are going for this burrowed roach play. Oh my god, that could have been really so much worse.
All these red health and
he's actually gonna kill everything with lings. Okay, that is just as bad as I thought it was going to be, Fear Dragon.
Fire there from True, by the way. With all those drones stacked, it's sometimes difficult to target fire down the low health ones. He does a great job. And he moves that from, what, 2 drones to 12? With just those good target firing lings.
A lot of times if you try drop Overlords, instead of just filling it all up with Banelings, you want to put a couple of Zerglings in there just to get those little last hits. We didn't see the drop there, but that's the idea. You run the Banelings in first, even if you don't get, you don't have the upgrade advantage to kill off the drones. Run some Zerglings in there to finish the deal, and that is a big deal for True because it gives him that little worker lead and also a big larva lead, because while Lambo's having to remake those workers, True is having a huge swell of roaches.
I mean, you were talking about that tunneling claws coming out as we end up having our wonderful observer pointing that out. And they're finishing up for the exact same time for both of these players. And the funny thing is, this isn't, I mean, it's something that absolutely happens in ZvZ, but it's not something that happens a majority of games. So I don't think that either one of these players are going to be expecting their opponents to also have this.
And we haven't seen whether or not... Okay, this is going to be the first time that roaches interact with each other. So if True is watching his roaches, he is going to see that they're kind of glitching out as they walk right on by. So here's the moment of truth as we get both players with roaches back in the backs of their respective mineral lines.
Okay, roaches coming forward. There's a lot more here for Lambo, but True's roaches are a bit more split up. So he might be able to get some damage done in more multi-prong fashion. True has a couple of these roaches around. We end up seeing the roaches for both sides killing off a decent number of workers, but it does seem like right now True losing a few more.
That's right. True is actually a little bit faster to pull the trigger on those roaches. They got in position a little bit more quickly, and that means that the drone tragedies are happening for him a little bit more slowly. He also had better detection back in his base, so True is going to theoretically come out on top of this. It's not just about who loses more workers, but how easy it is for them to clear up these sort of guerrilla forces of roaches that have burrowed into random wacky places in their bases. And it does actually look like in the end, True winds up losing many more workers, which may, I guess, wind up evening things out after he was able to deal such strong economic damage to Lambo earlier.
Yeah, and remember that upgrade advantage, it's going to eventually, as +2 missile attack, start to finish up over here for True. It's going to start to be equalized, but that's a pretty massive worker advantage. 7 workers in a situation where you're both on a maximum of 55. I really am starting to like a lot of this situation for Lambo, but True still does have a few more roaches than his opponent. It's still going to be anyone's game from here, but I like a lot of the things that are kind of going in Lambo's favor.
I love that this game is such a slugfest. A lot of times you look on the bracket and you see, oh, ZvZs. They're fast, they're dirty, they end in 10 seconds. No, sometimes, yes, game number 1 is an illustration of what that looks like, a 3-minute, 30-second game, but every once in a while you go the distance. This is 10 minutes of non-stop action. And here we find ourselves at that 10-minute mark with 2 maxed out Roach versus Roach army, but actually Truce gets caught a little bit out on the map.
Yeah, True had a lot of his army up on the north side dealing with 1 or 2 roaches, and now he engages with only half his army at the time. He still has that defender's advantage, but at the same time, he's also going to be losing some drones here and there that are still trying to mine from that hatchery. Lambo looking really good in this engagement.
I mean, he's going to take down the hatchery if he keeps up with this. True trying to posture forward and backwards. The concave actually going maybe a little bit to Lambo, but here comes True pushing in. He's trying to defend that hatchery at all costs, but he might have given up a little bit too much. The reinforcements coming back from the back will finally be just enough to push Lambo away.
Lambo may have had fewer Ravagers for all of these fights, but his corrosive vials have been far more on point than True's. True's have been having some trouble dodging out of those shots here and there, whereas Lambo's been able to easily dodge out and get some beautiful connections with his opponent. And that's really what I feel like allowed him to make a huge amount of progress in that push.
That's right. Biles are going to be very, very key. It looks like finally, I think True has a critical mass of roaches that should be able to push Lambo back. He was never able to take down that hatchery, but he is going to sneak a few cheeky roaches into the main.
Oh, he's going to need this too, because he needs to make sure True can't just snowball after taking a fairly good end of the fight. So he pulls True mostly back home. True's not pulling back with his entire army. He's burrowing his drones, which is a really cute play here, but he's going for a counterattack with the rest of his roaches and Ravagers. Is it going to be enough to get damage on? Well, maybe if he finds a lot of the army here.
Corrosive Files, yeah, you got to watch out for those. He was about to cut off a section of Lambo's army, but I think that it was actually a little bit bigger than he wanted to fight right there. So instead, he's going to try to do what all Zerg players do best, and that is try to maneuver around and catch small chunks out of position. He's going to do a good job at that, picking off several roaches, but back at home, he's losing all of his drones.
Yeah, True has almost been forced into an all-in position from here. He can kill off the 4th base, but he is sitting on 33 workers to 50 workers, and Lambo still has that 3rd base. True just doesn't have any drones to work with. He needs to make something happen with this army. It's going to be hard to replenish off that economy. He's able to at least trade out relatively evenly, relatively effectively, and he's finally started to clean up these remaining roaches, but so much lost mining time as well.
Yeah, anytime you send part of your army to do economic harassment, it's not going to be there in the heads-up fight. So it is truly a decision that can cost you a lot if you go for a big fight right after that. For Lambo, he was able to get that economic damage done behind, still keeping his army safe and sound and avoid fighting a straight-up 1v1. And now things have I don't want to say equalized, because while there's no fighting, True is down a massive amount of workers.
And don't forget that 4th base, it's so low on hit points. If Lambo gets even a little bit of ground in this engagement, if he doesn't outright win it, then True's going to end up losing his 4th base, so we know he's going to have to defend this. He comes in with a lot of roaches on the north side. In a weird way, he's kind of creating a concave on Lambo that might start working out in his favor, but he has so many roaches not quite attacking. He's starting to lose some of the Ravagers as well. This is such a close fight to call, but if it's a close fight, then Lambo's going to be happier with it.
Lambo, can he do it right here and now? He's got the concave, but he has fewer roach numbers. His roaches are much lower HP, but he's split them him again. This time and time again is True's weakness. He fights the heads-up battle, but he loses his economy behind it.
I mean, both of these players got the burrowed roaches. They both got tunneling claws, but we've definitely seen that Lambo's been the one to make more effective use out of it. Even throwing the contamination on the hatchery, preventing that larva to coming out for a little bit longer. Just messing with True as many ways as possible, because the longer this game goes on, the better it is for Lambo. He's reestablishing that fourth base, and once it gets reestablished, all those excess drones he has mining on the few mineral patches left over, they're all going to start kicking in.
I love the kind of stalemate that we're stuck at right now. Neither player can afford to tech up past roaches because you're just trading out these insane numbers of roaches. That's why gooping the hatchery is actually pretty effective, because it's just a battle of larvae. How many of these squidgy little larvae can you just fling at your opponent in roach form? Whoever has one more wins in the end, right? So it is just a really sick, close game here. We're only in game 3.
And True finally finding a little bit of his own damage, and of course being met with the same burrowed drone tactic on the defensive play from Lambo that he was employing himself. One single roach coming in, almost gets a kill or two.
10 minutes from now, when we're still building only roaches, Ravi, this game is going to look a little bit the same.
Yeah, I mean, True, the thing is, True has had, you were talking about this before, this is the first time he's ever started droning up. Since he got knocked down to 33 drones, he's just been pumping out non-stop roaches because he knew he was going to die otherwise. But this is where it's going to start hurting him more and more. You see, look at the army supply, as Johan Merlo would say, 131 army supply to 100. It's just clearly in favor of Lambo right now.
Right. What is finally catching up to us in this series, while it might look like it's staying exactly the same, time after time, Lambo is sneaking a couple of roaches into the back lines and hurting True's economy. You see it, and it's only maybe 10, 15 different right now, but in ZvZs, especially in Massive Roach Wars, that can be an eternity. Now, this is the big move from True to try to equalize this, but I feel like he's going to lose too much on the other side.
Yeah, I think the idea here is to try and do damage faster than your opponent does, but there's already a handful of roaches waiting here from Lambo. Good Corrosive Biles does actually take some pretty efficient trades here. And the funny thing is, this is exactly what True was hoping for. He was hoping for Lambo to pull all the way back home. And if he can keep these units alive and get out of there, maybe he's done some damage and he can still start to equalize a little bit more, but he's got to clean up those roaches in his own third base as well.
Right, one of the reasons Lambo pulled back, I guess, is because he has the stronger economy. So if you want to trade units over and over again, obviously the person who can reinforce them faster wins. So the pullback, I felt like was meant to take a fight, but True just really pieces the scene and is not willing to fight him heads up.
Yeah, he has a few roaches, or I think units over by Lambo's current fourth base right now. Can we actually take a look at that? I just see a bunch of blue on the mini map. Okay, oh yeah, sorry, just changelings. I was like, wait, does he have some burrowed roaches there? No. But Lambo's still continuing these burrowed roach plays. You know, I really like a lot of the burrowed roach plays, and he's been able to claim his lead off of them. But you do have to be a bit careful, because if you bleed off too much of your army supply, yes, True has an abysmal economy, but he's not that far behind in army supply. So if you bleed off too many of these roaches, you start giving up that army supply advantage, and True finds opportunities to maybe start droning again.
But on the other side, a Spire from Lambo could really put the, I guess, period at the end of the death sentence in game number 3. This is a big tech investment. We talked about how that can be a liability if you are just going hardcore heavy roach on roach. But at this point, it could just be the little lead he needs to finally take True out. And True really hates things that float in the sky.
I mean, he also seems to hate his own units as he crossed the pile of 2 of his own roaches there. But gets the Overseer or the Overlord there. With that Spire finishing up, though, the timer is on True, and the problem is he doesn't even know it. And honestly, if he knew it, I don't know what he would even be able to do about it at this point.
Now, this might be a little bit of a weak spot for Lambo. He's teching up, he's double expanding right now, and he is going to invest all of his resources into Mutalisk. Well, not all of them, but he ran out of gas there at the end. But with these mutants coming out, this is the time for True. If he doesn't make something happen right now, he's just going to keep falling further and further behind.
I mean, to be frank, I have to say that I think that the time for True was 45 seconds to a minute ago if he was going to try and make something happen and capitalize on the mutas coming out when Lambo was maybe still trying to think about banking gas and banking minerals. But now the mutas are already out. They just get to focus fire down any of the Ravagers. And it looks like the first muta is revealed, so True should know. But what's he going to do? Is he makes 4 crawlers take away 4% of his economy per spore crawler?
Well, every Roach and Ravager here will die eventually.
Yeah.
He's going to try to trade this huge army out and then maybe replace it behind it. But on 23 workers, that is just not going to be feasible. And as we watch the slow, sad death of everything in True's army, I feel like this could be Lambo's moment to really seal the deal.
Yeah, this is going to be a good emotional victory for Lambo as well because he's been kind of in control of this entire game. True, maybe not going to feel too terrible as Lambo does take the third game and going up 2-1. But man, True was quite frankly dead to rights for about 10 minutes in that game, but still he made it look like, wait a second, Lambo, are you gonna let this slip through your fingers? And he doesn't, but man, that's kind of the good feeling as the loser still.
Right, if you cover up the workers tab and ask anyone in Twitch chat who has more workers, it's really hard to tell there.
And they're all Twitch GMs, so you know it's confusing.
That's right. Well, I was at least like ask the audience. Of course, the best lifeline to have, and of course also true here in WCS Austin. This is day number 2, and we have 2 players that advanced all the way through a grueling 3 group stages to be here. So, of course, both very, very well qualified, but you can start to see the true difference, oh man, my word choice this series, between their styles. True, very strong early on, but Lambo, the decisions to split up his roaches and deal those little tiny death by 1,000 cuts harassment damage during those fights just really paid off in the end.
I mean, slightly different opening, sure, but they both had the same tool sets and one player used it better, and that was Lambo. And I feel like that goes back into what you were saying before about how Lambo's probably going to feel confident or kind of comfortable in that sort of more normal looking game. True is going to feel more comfortable in those kind of chaotic games. And I feel like that's a lot of what allowed him to stay in that game. Pig was talking a lot about this. He does so much better when the game gets chaotic, and that's what he made that last game. He made it chaotic for the last 8-10 minutes. If it's a standard, normal macro game from there, Lambo crushes True. But True turns it into this weird situation, and that's what allows him to stay there, so he's gonna have to do it a couple more times.
Well, we are going to start getting a little bit weird as we get into our newer maps in the map pool. Lost and Found, we just finished that, and that means we're moving on to Darkness Sanctuary. Now, it's not quite as dark as it used to be, so we'll try to shed some light on things as we get into our 4th game in this ZvZ, starting by introducing in the bottom right-hand corner of Darkness Sanctuary. In the blue, it's True.
It's hard to follow that up, man. I don't know any words that rhyme with Lambo, but here is going to be spawning up in the top left-hand corner of the map, our Red Zerg player. It's Lambo.
If you change the L to an M, it's Mambo, and then you can talk about how he's strong in game 5s. But for right now, we're only at game number 4. Lambo up 2-1 in the series. And of course, we talk about how True has achieved the highest heights of the WCS circuit in his championship last year. For Lambo, he's still trying to make it past this round of 16. He's poised to do it. He looks very, very strong. But I feel like right as you reach the precipice of taking this series can be where True can really strike you down with some craziness, but it doesn't look like we'll be seeing that right now. And we have the biggest map on cross positions and a ZvZ. We could be going the distance.
Beautiful statues. Really beautiful map, honestly. I'm so glad it got lightened up a little bit so you can start to see some of those statues and everything. But yeah, you were talking about this before, Lambo. Or I should say True has made some of those deep runs and everything. And when he is down and behind, he's come back from pretty big deficits before in these offline tournaments. A lot of the Europeans especially, I feel like True does very well against because, again, they sleep on him. They don't show him a lot of the respect a lot of the times, and it comes back to bite them.
That's right, you never treat pro gamers as mattresses, sleeping, of course, on beds better instead. Because when you do not disrespect players, but just don't give them the credit they deserve, you wind up getting punished 9 times out of 10. So it's, of course, a well-researched statistic. I'm glad I could quote that right out there. But the end of the premise is that you always have to watch out for just about anything, and especially for True. He really can throw everything at you. And so our nice little overlords find each other out there, and we'll now know the spawning locations of both players.
Yeah, of course, this is a 4-player spawn map, and the players really had no idea where each other were. But now with the overlords, like you said, meeting each other on both the top right and the bottom left, you kind of know exactly where your opponents are. We do have an evolution chamber coming out pretty quick here for True. Sometimes this can be for the carapace upgrade, sometimes this can be for a melee upgrade really quickly, and sometimes it can be for the range upgrade. But the range upgrade is usually when you put it at the front, because you're trying to get that wall off like we saw from Lambo. So what is going to be the decision from True? Is he going for carapace? Is he going for melee, I think?
I was going to say, did you just list every possible thing that does?
You know, Rapid, he could go for one of the 3 upgrades that are available at this evolution chamber.
Why, yes, Dear Dragon, he certainly can. We've now described what the building does. Now, that's a queen. It can inject, but creep tumors, and we'll just explain what every unit does.
So the carapace upgrade, the really interesting dynamics that happen with that is, one, it's one of the really old school dynamics where if your Lings get hit by a Baneling, they will survive 1 Baneling kit. And that's a huge deal, because that means your Lings could potentially soak up a maximum of 2 different Baneling connections, which is a really massive deal in Ling versus Baneling wars. The other thing it does is that it gives your Lings a little bit more longevity when the roaches come out, because your Lings will, even if your opponent has +1 missile attack, they will still not get 2-shotted, they will still get 3-shotted. But after that, I feel like carapace upgrades start to kind of falter a bit.
Well, in truth, when you're cross positions on Darkness Sanctuary, you might as well throw down a second Evo chamber and just go the distance, right? I mean, this is just gigantic.
That's a, I mean, much faster lair there for Lambo, while he also gets up a 3rd base. And you were saying this, Darkness Sanctuary, very big map, but True, he's making a lot of Lings right now, whereas Lambo's making a lot of drones. I don't know if Lambo's going to be prepared for this.
I mean, Zerglings are pretty fast, and that's why ZvZ can be so volatile, but this map is just gigantic. And in game number 2, True was trying to just hold on until he was able to get Mutas out, and he wasn't able to, right? But now this map is so much bigger. Is that going to give him the extra time and home field advantage that he needs?
Oh, we're going to have to watch that Baneling. Is True going to see it? Oh, the Baneling does move a bit further back. It's trying to go over to the 3rd base to help defend. True gets a pick up on a Queen. He also gets a couple of Lings that run up. He sees the roaches, and he's going to know, okay, if I'm going to do damage with this, it's got to be soon. And remember, those roaches going to take a little longer to kill off these Lings.
Oh, Hatchery's dead?
Oh, it's gone.
It is done and dusted out of there. The Zerglings even escape before Lambo's roaches can get there.
But look at the production tab. Lambo, this is his response. He says, you can kill off my 3rd base, but Darkness Sanctuary is a massive map. That's what you're counting on, True. I'm not going to let that come into play. I'm just going to Nidus across the map, give you 0 time to have these Lings go for a big counterattack. I'm just going to kill you right then and there. True is trying to buy time with the Spire to get up those Mutas, and once that does come up, he's going to be okay. But there's the Nidus from True season. Can he do anything about it, though?
You know, his Lings are actually way out on the map, or at least a lot of them are. He does have Lings back at home, and with Zerglings and Queens, I think you can surround it enough to make it just not worth it. The Queens pop out, so they have the transfuses. Will they be able to keep it alive? 1 transfuse, 2, 3, it keeps on going. The roaches pop out, and True's base is being ravaged.
True just has nothing over here. He finally gets the Nidus Swarm, and more Lings are starting to stream forward. He's pulling the drones off the line in desperation. If he can hold on, he can lose a few drones because the Mutas are on the way, and he's still up in workers. He started to segment this off. Another Nidus Swarm is about to pop out, though. Is he doing enough? Does he have enough to hold?
I think he's doing it, Fear Dragon. The Mutas will not be out in time. The roach numbers keep growing through the Nidus. The drones are dropping, and I think Lambo has punched his ticket onto the round of 8. A vigilant defense here by True, but it's just not enough. The Roaches keep spilling across through the Nidus into True's main, and as they kill off 16 workers, they're looking for a whole lot more.
Oh, and they've just killed off everything that was trying to mine the main base. It's not even gas, guys. It's at the third base. So True is just mining gas on that natural, saying, get up the Mutos, get the Mutos. Hopefully I can do something. But there's still already 2 queens out. There's more queens being made here for Lambo. They're just going to cram them in. And now suddenly even the queen count as it is right now is enough to handle the Mutos. Lambo has played this series out so well. And as many players have fallen to True, as many Europeans have fallen to True, Lambo doesn't seem like he's going to be one of them today.
I don't think so, Fear Dragon. With these queens coming through, I mean, maybe you mute a micro your way to victory.
That's great. The offensive spore crawlers. Now we just need to spell them out into GG or something.
Well, our wonderful observer has highlighted the only hope for True, and that is Brood War-esque Mutamicro. Unfortunately, these don't quite do the same thing. And with Spores and Queens back home to defend, True really just is running out of options.
All right. Well, you know that you're not in a great spot when your opponent is offensively burrowing spore crawlers in range of your spine crawlers. As the overlords are getting picked off, the spine crawlers are going to go down, and Lambo at long last is about to get that round of 8 match.
GG, Lambo takes a 3-1 victory over True to advance to the WCS Austin round of 8. An incredible performance for the Clash Zerg player, coming all the way over here to Austin and doing an amazing job.
Lambo has played in so many WCS Circuit events. He's worked so hard. He's always come so close. There's a lot of hype around him every time, and he's never been able to make it, but finally he's done it. He's going to be moved on to that round of 8, and I think a lot of eyes are going to be on him. He's got to be feeling great right now about this finish.
Of course, a lot of eyes also on his very patriotic shorts. Of course, very appropriate here for WCS Austin. Let's head on stage with Smix to find out what Lambo has to say.
Thank you very much, Rapid. Congratulations, Lambo. Not only are you advancing here in Austin, this is your first top 8 at a WCS event ever in your career. That is a massive deal. How much does this mean to you?
It means a lot to me. Usually I always had trouble in offline events, but somehow in Austin, it actually is better than usual. Also last year, it was my first top 16 here, so somehow in Austin is my city, you know?
The fans definitely love to hear that, and it's great to see that the momentum is still going for you. Let's talk briefly about this series. It was overall a very strong series for you. The only map that you lost was the first map on Catalyst, and we noticed that after the game was over, you were sort of chuckling to yourself. So what was going through your head there?
I just laughed it off because usually I never lose to this build. Like, this build has been around since quite some time. Actually, it was very popular last year around Austin, and I beat quite a couple players that tried doing it, and that was like the first time I lost to it, and I can't even remember the last time I lost to it. So I was kind of annoyed at first, but I was like, whatever. If he needs to do these kind of builds, you know, then I'm fine.
Well, luckily you were able to take the next 3 maps in a row, and now you are moving on to that round of 8. And it's going to be another Zerg player, Scarlet or Nurchio, both very strong Zerg players. So what do you think of those 2 players and their strengths?
They're both very, very strong. Nurture plays more the standard style, more the solid style. Scarlet is very tricky. She has a ton of different build orders, so yeah, I actually would prefer Scarlet because I think against Nurture my score is completely terrible. I think he's the player that beats me. Okay, yeah. So I hope I get Scarlet, but I wouldn't mind either of them. I think both are beatable for me.
That sounds great. It's great to see you in that top 8. Congratulations again, Lambo. We'll talk to you in just a little bit. Let's head back to Nathanius.
Thank you very much, Smix. Lambo defeating True with some style after that first game aggression. Even the crowd blown away, as we can see there. And closing it out with some Nidus worms.
That was a great way to take advantage of this. I mean, True's been playing this a lot recently in practice on the ladder, and it was no secret that he likes Mutalisk play. He loves upgraded Zerglings. It makes sense on these maps, but I think maybe going for a little bit too much in these games, and Lambo just so tight at punishing it. He was like, you know what, you're gonna get Ling upgrades and drone up a third and go Mutas, and he's like, no, Roaches, Queens in your base, or Roaches and Banelings on that Acid Plant game.
Yeah.
I think it was just good, clean play from Lambo, and I think I was most impressed actually with Lost and Found, where there was a lot of that Tunneling Claw Roach action. Normally True excels in that sort of situation, and backstage I was like, oh, I think even though he's a bit down down in supply. I think True's going to like wriggle his way through this one. But Lambo stayed strong, closed it out with the muta switch in the late game, and it was just clean play, man.
Yeah, True is supposed to be the player that thrives in chaos, Roddy, but I think especially that Lost and Found game shows that Lambo has what it takes to play that long, crazy game.
Yeah, I think Lambo made a lot of very good crucial calls in some hectic moments in this series as well, but then saving up a little bit of money in the end when it got truly hectic, a very low economy game. He's like, no, actually, I know that I have a few more workers. I can get a Spire out here, and the moment that those mutas were out, that game wasn't even close anymore. And that's always a risky call to make because you may feel like, I actually think I'm doing fine, so do I need to take that risk? What if I die right before the mutas come out? But Lambo played a really good series pick. I do have a question for you. If you look at that last game, right, I think a lot of non-Zerg players will look at that matchup on Darkness Sanctuary. It's like, if True plays that style, wouldn't it be worth to have a Baneling nest? So in case you do get Nidus, you have a couple Banelings, and you can just blow up the Nidus worm immediately.
That's 100% the counter. It really is. If you can have 3 Banelings, you instantly detonate them when it pops up, but they need to be pre-morphed, right? Because it actually takes a lot longer for a Baneling to morph than a Nidus worm. So it's something you've kind of got to do as a safety precaution if you think that's an option. And it's kind of funny because looking at that, I don't think Lambo was planning to do the Nidus, but then his third got cancelled by the Zerglings, and you think, hey, you're up against a 2-base Roach Zerg, you're going mutas. That's the #1 thing you've got to stay safe against.
Yeah, especially cross-map Darkness Sanctuary. It's very unlikely that roaches are going to rally across the map. This map is obviously incredibly big, so I think a single Baneling nest would have probably saved True's game there.
Yeah, I got to agree with that one. It's one of those things where it's kind of tough because sometimes you just get caught up with the size of those maps. It's funny because I've seen True recently in his practice actually go like mass upgraded Zerglings with much later mutas, and I think with that one you can kind of overpower with raw Zergling numbers, but we saw like that kind of horrible situation. The Zerglings are trying to kill the Nidus worm and there's like transfuse. It
also felt
and you're like, oh, this is hard to watch.
Like the Lings were sleeping on the job for a split second there, right? It would have been nice if they were right on top of that Nidus, where sometimes it becomes hard for units to actually pop out, you know, because they have to find the right space, but the Lings are just kind of standing on the north side of the Nidus. And by the time they started going for the Nidus, I felt like 3-4 Queen. I don't think he would have been able to kill it with the Lings, but it's just nice to have that immediate surround rather than running into enemy
sometimes
units.
You just A-move, right? You don't even click on the Nidus worm, and the Queens and the Roaches, they can't pop out in that little clump, and instead each one is kind of surrounded by the Zerglings. Melee units are all about surface area, so suddenly your damage output, you can kind of just A-move the Lings and they actually perform way better.
Yeah, I do want to point out real quick, because in the end there, Lambo said on stage, he's like, Scarlet's very tricky, Nurture's very solid, but I think I prefer to play Scarlet because I think my record versus Nurture's not very good. Now, obviously, we'll keep talking about it, but we already looked it up before, and it's really funny because this is not a statistic you often see. Like, Nurture is obviously the old school player, and Lambo has been an up-and-coming player for 2-3 years. So you kind of expect, you know, Nurture to beat Lambo in the early days, but eventually Lambo starts taking some series. But this is the complete opposite story. Lambo won their very first encounter ever in 2015. He got a 3-2 victory, and then he lost 15 series in a row.
Ouch.
How does that happen? Like, Lambo is so good.
I can see why he wants to play against Scarlet. We're going to take a look at the schedule and the bracket and keep you guys up to speed on everything that is going on as we are clearing out. Almost done with half of the round of 16. Lambo, as you guys have just talked about, will face the winner of Scarlet and Nurtio, and then the winner of that match, of course, will be seeing Cyril play against Hero Marine on the top side. Then, after halftime, we got Neeb coming in, Stefano, Mana, Snoot, a Laser, TLO, Bly Special. I think a lot of great series coming up. Kind of moving away from some of the mirror matchups. We do have another ZvZ coming up.
Look at the German representation, by the way. Like, what year is this? The Germans coming out in full force. Already 2 German players in the quarterfinals. Dr. Dario still comes in action later today as well. It's been a long time since we had that many Germans going deep in a tournament like this.
Is it fair to say Germany's the new Netherlands, Kev?
No, never.
With that being said, we're going to go to break. When we return, that next Zerg versus Zerg coming at you here. You're watching the World Championship Series.